We're now joined by Dr. Architect Daniel Manduku. He is the Member of Parliament for Nyaribari Masaba Constituency. He's our guest this morning. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, and thank you once again.
It's good to have you again on the hot seat of the Situation Room.
It's always my pleasure to come back here. And I look forward to many more interactions.
Very good.
Thank you.
We always have conversations with Dr. Architect Manduku on very many things. You know, he's a Member of Parliament. He was the founder, boss of the National Construction Authority. He has been the boss at the Kenya Ports Authority and many other places. He is an architect by profession. So conversations, many. City has the day's proverb. You know, City has proverbs every week. And every week's proverbs are from a different country. This week, the proverbs are from the Republic of
Burundi.
Mheshimiwa, what's the capital city of Burundi?
Capital city of Burundi is Bujumbura. And as an architect, I worked there 20 years ago, so I know it pretty well.
So you built it?
I built Bujumbura, Kigali, and a bit of Kampala.
Very good. Now there's another one. There's another capital. We're calling it Gideri. What is that capital city?
The political capital called Gitega.
Gitega.
Yes. You would know where Gitega is.
Yes. No.
Because Bujumbura is the economic capital.
Okay.
I mean, do you think it's time we also had a political capital and economic capital? Because Nairobi seems to be the one-stop shop.
Too congested, eh?
Yes. Economic hapo ndani, political hapo ndani, kila kitu hapo ndani.
Administrative.
The Nigerians did it. The Tanzanians did it.
South Africans have done it.
South Africans have Pretoria and Cape Town.
Isiolo.
Dodoma and Dar es Salaam.
Dar es Salaam. We have Abuja and Lagos. So it's possible.
Isiolo.
Good place.
Will be the
Not
administrative.
Kisii.
The Americans have done it.
Kisii is good.
Yeah.
Land problem.
Kisii is good, he said.
Very good. Land problem. Land.
Yeah.
You need a lot of land.
Need land.
A lot of, and we don't want to go around displacing people. Yes.
Or plants.
Yes.
Okay, the proverb city.
Right. The unlucky man's hope prevented him from committing suicide.
The unlucky man's hope prevented him from committing suicide. Mheshimiwa, what do you make of this proverb? What's your interpretation?
I think it is about looking forward and hoping that the next day will be better than yesterday.
Hope keeps you alive.
It does, actually.
Literally.
It trumps almost anything.
And that is what we preach as politicians.
I thought you were going to say pastors. I was going to say, wait.
No,
We're crossing lines.
We tell you that we shall do this for you tomorrow.
For all you know, the good architect here may be an elder.
It's possible.
It's very possible. Depending on the inclination of his faith.
It
It could be elder.
That's true.
Mheshimiwa, there's a lot that's happening in the country, and there's all these questions. How is our economy faring? Our shilling is losing its value to major global currencies, like on a daily basis. There's a story now today in the Business Daily where, looking at the supplementary budget that's before you in Parliament, our debt servicing costs have gone up by 216 billion shillings on account of the weakening shilling. Just that alone, 216 billion shillings more that we need to cough up to pay for our debt. Look at the price of fuel going up. Look at the cost of living going up. What's happening?
Eric, I think as a country, we have not gotten our economic fundamentals right for a long time. It's only last week when I heard the Deputy President of Ghana saying that the true value of your currency against the dollar will show your economic strength. And the shilling now getting its true value shows that we've been doing monkey business with our economy for a long time. It doesn't add up because even the governor of central bank himself confirmed that the previously thought value of our shilling was artificial, that it had been shored up in the last regime. And now it is time for the shilling to find its own value in the market. Of course, I sit in the Committee on Public Debt, and I can tell you that we are not in a good position because 70% of what we collect in taxes is supposed to service our debt. And when you look at this debt, when it was taken, if it had been applied to the critical sectors, then we would have had a very sparing economic activity and hence growth. And therefore repayment would not be a problem. But this debt was taken and used on some infrastructure projects which may not have had a direct impact on the common person.
Okay.
Furthermore, it was not equitably distributed. And debt has to have a sense of equity. So you find that some regions benefited more than others. And so we are watching and wondering, because as you know, we've been told that we are not shareholders. We in Azimio are not shareholders, so we are watching from the window.
Yeah.
But more than that, we are also giving government some advice. The only way we can get out of this is to go back to the basics. The president himself told us that he's going to focus on 5 areas. Agriculture, job creation, ICT,
Health,
housing,
housing.
and housing. We need to see an agenda that is focused on those areas. And it has to be a deliberate agenda.
Aren't we seeing that?
If we are saying it, we are not in the benefits. 1 year is too long a time to wait now. It is time we started reaping benefits. The housing agenda, yes, we've been told it's coming on. We're waiting. I wish it had started about 3-4 months ago. Then we'll be seeing some activity which can spur economic growth.
Okay.
Our biggest problem, and it goes back to the gross domestic product formula, is that we are not able to consume. Because we must consume and invest for us to grow our GDP.
Oh, please explain that a little bit more so that we can understand. Consume and invest.
The focus for this government has been on production, which is perfect. But then, even after we produce, majority of the people are not able to consume. Why? Because we don't have the disposable income. And to grow our GDP, 2 things must be in place. 1 must be investment. 2 must be consumption. We should be encouraging consumption so that what we produce can be consumed.
Okay.
That is why if you go to the market in Kisii today, in the evening, mamas go back with hordes of tomatoes, avocados, and bananas, which they are not able to sell. Not because we are not producing, it's because there are no people to consume.
Or that
Go
the
to
people
our
who are
supermarkets.
available don't have the
The
purchasing,
purchasing power.
Okay.
Go to supermarkets today, the shelves are full of bread and flour. Why are they not moving? Because we don't have consumption. How do we increase consumption? 1, we must look at the regime of taxation. Because any extra coin that you save by getting a tax rebate will obviously go into consumption. Number 2, government must spend. This myth of pending bills and money that has not been paid must also be put out in the market. If government spends, there is a tax rebate and there's access to credit, then consumption goes up. And if consumption goes up, economy grows or expands. That is why in America today, if you're employed as a waiter and you earn, for argument's sake, say 50,000 shillings equivalent, you're given 4 credit cards and you're able to borrow up to 2 million shillings because they want you to consume. In this country, we don't have access to credit. And we must make the middle class have access to disposable income. Even me, as a member of parliament now, I look at the coins. I mean, what am I buying? 10 years ago, I never cared. Why? Because we are getting less and less money at our disposal. And it gets worse as you go down the pyramid. The other thing we need to address, Mr. Latif, we have been very traditional in our approach to agriculture. No matter what you do, a coffee bag will only sell for so much.
Yeah.
We need to go to the other level of value addition. What is so mythical about Starbucks? Because the money is always made upstream, not downstream. So our farmers will still get the $100, $200 maximum per bag. But the guy in Starbucks, from the same bag, will reap $15,000. What is it that we are not doing as a country to value add? And on basic commodities like coffee, tea. If you go to London today, they have what they call a tradition, they call London high tea.
Yes.
A cup of London tea, which is Kenyan tea, is £30 plus the small scones. Why? Because they took it from Kenya, repackaged it, maybe blended with some tea from Sri Lanka, and sell it for £30.
600 shillings. Yeah.
And you wonder, what is so mythical about this? And so the government should move from talking and do real agro-processing.
What's it going to take? Mheshimiwa, I think some of the things you're saying have great value, and we often ask ourselves, what's the point about talking about some of these things if we continue to put ourselves in this, it's a cycle of we talk about it and wait for something to happen. But I think it's important to highlight a number of these things because then you start to have an eye on what things should look like or what you can do. What would be the thing that would unlock some of these things? Because we keep saying it should be. This is how it ought to be. It should look like this. But there seems to be something, and it really doesn't matter what side of the political divide you are on. There's got to be something that unlocks this locked door that would lead us. We had an energy conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we looked at the energy consumption in South Africa compared to the energy consumption in Kenya. The energy consumption in Kenya is significantly lower because of one thing. It's manufacturing. South Africa is manufacturing. There's local production that's going on. So this thing that you're talking about. And so maybe it's a blessing in disguise because what kind of energy is Kenya producing in order to have manufacturing up there? So the question is, what needs to happen to unlock it? Is it just implementation? Because we cry about implementation of policy all the time. We say, okay, is it corruption? We're not putting the money in the right place. We say, okay, like you've talked about debt. We're not taking the money that should be used for development and using it for development. We're using it for other things. What is that key?
I'll answer that question from a personal experience point of view. In my other life, I'm a consultant. And a couple of investors come to my desk and they seek for investment licenses. I have a scenario where I made an application to the county of Mombasa in 2020 for a gas plant. 2020. We're in 2023. I have never got the license.
Oh, we're still waiting. Okay.
I'm still waiting. Okay. I'm giving you an example.
Are you going through the process or are you still at stage number 1?
I think I've done 14 steps. There's only one step remaining 3 years later. And yet the president talks about affordable gas.
What's that final step?
I'll give you an example.
Another example.
I have another project where I got all the licenses until the NEMA license. Everything on board. Then some cartels go to the tribunal. The same people, every time you do the same project, go to the tribunal. What am I saying? Ease of doing business. We have got 16 licenses.
What do they go to tell the tribunal? I'm curious.
Or public participation, or basically they're wasting time to discourage investment. And true enough, they have discouraged investment.
To what end?
Walk to Tanzania today and say you want to establish a gas plant. I can challenge you. In 3 months, you have everything. Go to Rwanda. You want to start a farm, agro-processing farm. In 1 week, you have all the licenses. Come to Kenya. In 3 years, you have 15 licenses out of 17. And then they say, we are on a digital platform. Why do I have 16 licenses in my factory? I have a small manufacturing plant myself. I have 16 licenses. You ask yourself, why? Why can't they do them back end? And have one, consolidate them. Same with construction sector. For you to build in Nairobi, you need 10 licenses.
10.
Why?
Yes. Ease of doing business. That is one area that we can unlock. An investor will not wait for 3 years when he has options. And these are used for rent seeking. Either the governors, the people in the office, where it's rent seeking. And so we have discouraged external investment. Our policies are very good on paper, yes. Wait until you apply for a license. And I'm telling you this from personal experience. The second thing that we need to do, and I'm saying it again, government must spend. And pending bills must be paid. And if government has no money for paying bills, they can look for an instrument in the market.
Mheshimiwa, describe when we say government must spend, so we can understand. Because as we can all see, government is spending, flying all over the place, doing things.
Well,
When
spend
you
in the
say
right
government-
places.
Exactly. So clarify, when you say government must spend,
We
what are
must
talking
prioritize
about
our
here?
spending. If our focus is on agriculture, we must focus and spend our money in agriculture for production, for value addition. If our priority is agriculture, we must prioritize in sectors that give us results, not spend money in what you're calling traveling and other things.
You see, I'm thinking about all those things that you're saying, and I'm looking back at what the government has done, what budgets that you approved. You're about to approve a supplement to debate a supplementary budget. Agriculture is getting extra funding in the supplementary budget, on top of what they got in on the original budget. Why? Because we're talking about, the subsidy for inputs. You are talking about post-harvest management, thinking about the dryers and all, and the silos and construction of silos. That's spending, isn't it?
That's very good. That is perfect.
Okay.
I think we need to spend a bit more on that. What is coming out is that even what we are putting is not enough.
It's not sufficient.
It's not sufficient.
But there's no money. Where are you going to get the extra money from?
One way is to go PPP way. Who says that government must spend on off budget? Go the public-private partnership way. And again, remove the barriers. In this country, since we started talking about PPP, I think we've only had one successful project. There are thousands of proposals lying on the tables of the treasury mandarins in charge of PPP. And again, you ask yourself, why is it taking so long to approve such projects? And these projects are cutting across sectors: agriculture, energy, ICT. Same problem. We are not easy to do business with. And it comes to the personal characters of the people involved. Because policy is clear, but when it comes to actual follow-up, it becomes a problem. Sometimes you must look for the minister, to look for the PS, to look for the DG to get a license. But how many Kenyans can do that?
And why should someone look for a
And why should you do that when the rules are very clear?
But then it means that if the DG and all these people you mentioned help, then it means they themselves are part and parcel of the problem. Because everybody who is supposed to issue those licenses work in their respective ministries, parastatals, etc., etc., etc. Are we saying that because you have to go to those levels to get something as simple as a license, which is actually your right, that they do not know that this is happening and that they are not cracking the whip to ensure it happens?
From where I sit, I think it's deliberate. How else would you explain that all these things we talk about are well known and nothing happens about it? I think the president must be deliberate with this. I can assure you today, if you go to cabinet ministers' desks, there are thousands and thousands of pending proposals for investment. There are thousands and hundreds of pending licenses. I can assure you that.
Why must those things end up in a cabinet secretary's desk?
I think our structure is such that it's a pyramid, and that we are very bureaucratic by nature.
Pyramid as in, or is it an inverted pyramid?
Well, and so
Starting
most
from the
things
bottom,
are
the
decided
base.
at the executive level. And I have a proposal, by the way, in Parliament, and I hope it will come law, where we have a one licensing regime, single window licensing for everything. And if that proposal goes through, then you'll see a lot of things being unlocked on account of ease of doing business. We used to have presidential roundtables in the last regime on ease of doing business, and we would discuss these things openly. And somehow things would move after the meeting. Then after some time again, we go back to the same story. If you talk to CAM, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, where I'm a member, we have these frustrations.
So are we saying, essentially, Mheshimiwa, just from the top layer, if some of these things were to be fixed, then what I'm hearing you say is that significant reduction of the non-performance in terms of development then could be realized?
Definitely. That I can assure you. The investors who come here, they want to have a meeting with, say, CS for a particular ministry. And mainly for what we call investor confidence. And the guys can wait for up to a week in the hotel. And you see the minister attending a church service. You see him going for a political rally. An investor will need only 30 minutes of your time, Mr. CS. What he wants is confidence that I met the CS and I was assured that my investment will work. We've had a couple of them coming, they meet the minister for 5 minutes at JKIA when he's on transit. I have practical experience I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I have met a minister myself with an investor at Wilson for 3 minutes. The guy tells me I'm flying out, come to Wilson Airport. 3 minutes, standing. And you go back to Turkey, this is not a simple guy. This is a guy who runs a shipyard. He wants to come and invest in shipbuilding.
Why would an investor just want to meet a minister?
Confidence.
But why?
It is the nature of the Asian people that when they do business, they want to look at your eye and say, I want to do business with you. That is the nature.
Okay, but why minister?
And it has nothing to do with, well, the
why
highest,
not PS?
the highest decision-making person in the sector is a minister.
So we are to say that if you were to do business in their countries, you
will
will
also go and meet the ministers.
And you'd meet the minister.
and look the minister in the eye.
Spice.
With the Honorable Dr. Daniel Manduku, Member of Parliament, Nyaribari Masaba Constituency. We are talking about political promises, the shrinking economy, and basically how things are going. You are expressing a lot of frustration in terms of, what is happening in the ease of doing business. This conversation about ease of doing business has been there since, we can even go back into Kibaki years. There was a conversation about ease of doing business, attracting investment, spurring local investment. The Uhuru administration, Uhuru 1, Uhuru 2, same. We're into Ruto administration, it's the same. Ministry of Industry, Trade, Investment, separate state departments, a state department specifically for investment, for attracting investment, for spurring investment and growth, expanding special economic zones, EPZs across the country, creating the industrial parks in the counties, looking at all those ways of having investment in the country. But you're saying the process is still a stumbling block.
What you're saying is this: the policy is perfect. What seems to be a hindrance is the implementation, as usual. And my view, honestly, is that the president should take charge of this sector himself at his office. Because
What
I have a
charge
feeling.
does the president
I have a
take?
feeling
The president has taken charge by creating a state department.
It needs to be briefed on a weekly basis by these departments. How many investors came last week? How many investors came? Why are they not coming? Then that way people will wake up. There are thousands of licenses waiting for approval in this country, in every sector. And you cannot start investments without these licenses. And that is where we have a challenge.
But you see, Mheshimiwa, we have sat here with the Principal Secretary for Investment. He has a target. He's been given a target by the President. This is the target of FDI that you have every year. Okay? Several billions of dollars. So for him to meet that target, it means that he has the incentive to make sure that the process is working and it's moving. But it's like you
Another
said,
thing that can
some
be
of
done.
those things are because of the multiplicity of laws that we have. So you have so many regulators in the space. So you have to go to an environment regulator, you've got to go to a water regulator, you've got to go to I don't know which regulator. All those are created by Parliament. What is Parliament's role in unlocking this thing?
During Governor Kidero's time, we had an agreement in the construction sector. And we had a window, single window. And it worked. I would encourage that the same happens on investment matters. That the Ministry of Investment encourages these agencies to work on one platform for openness, for transparency, and for speedy issuance of licenses. It gets very frustrating when you wait for 1 year to get a license and no one has a reason or no one has an obligation to explain to you why.
Yeah.
How do you solve that? Let's have a transparent, single window licensing regime. And this, you don't need a law.
A seamless one.
Yeah.
It
You
moves
just
into
need
this
an
desk.
agreement among the agencies, because we have done that in the past. Now, if that happens, then you start seeing activity. Especially, there are people who want to invest in renewable energy. People want to invest in processing, agro-processing. And the licenses are always the same. Alternatively, have what you call a fast track for investors. Whereas a license should take 90 days, it can be fast tracked. We have officers working in these places. They're knowledgeable enough. And the intention of every investor is to actually follow the law and comply with regulations.
Well, sure, I'm stumped a little bit because it seems to me that it would be very obvious, yeah? Because we talk about the fact that, look, it's very difficult, and except for those economies which have, heavy funding and, superfluous amount of funds, that most governments will get into a situation whereby they do the very same thing that you've suggested in terms of public-private partnerships. And a lot of economies thrive on those. Now, if we see that as a solution for some of these things, whether it comes to infrastructure, building of roads, facilities, etc., whether it comes to, pumping in agriculture, health, whatever it may be, as a solution, and if 1 + 1 = 2, what would stop you then from making sure that the fuel to make this particular engine run then is not stumbled? Why wouldn't it be very obvious that you need to make sure that works?
Same questions we ask. It's obvious to you, it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious to some guys. But then, I think continued advocacy and agitation, and especially when I bring my motion to Parliament, I think it will create some reawakening, because I'll come with facts and figures, and I'll persuade members to see my point, that we need to make it easier for investors, both local and international, to put their money in Kenya.
So your proposal is to create a single window
Correct.
platform.
Yes.
Similar to the one for trade, Kentrade.
Correct.
The Kenya Trade Network Agency,
Yes.
right?
Yes, Kentrade.
When you're importing, you act at the port. An importer just goes onto this platform and you deal with KPA, you deal with KRA, you deal with NEMA, you deal with everybody on a single platform window, and you move your goods.
Correct.
So why can't we do that on investment application?
I've done a letter to the Speaker. I'm waiting for a response so that I can bring the bill to the House. And the idea is just to make it easier for you and me and others to invest. Because we always hide behind our single laws. Every agency hides behind its enabling legislation.
Yes.
So we want to come to an area where this supersedes those provisions.
You want to solve a legislative problem. It isn't a legislative problem. The legislation was put in place so that we could streamline processes. The subversion, it isn't as though the legislation is subverting itself. It is people who are subverting it. And it's a
I
simple,
think it's how we approach our problems usually. You're walking from here, you want to get out of this floor. If you find a stumbling block in the name of a door there, you're thinking about the door. So you think, all right, so this door opens on the inside and not on the outside. So let's get another door that opens on the outside and not on the inside. So you're only thinking about that. And you're not thinking about why was it opening on the inside and not,
Yes.
So you're not thinking holistically. And that's why we keep coming up with new authorities, new regulators.
Yes.
Correct.
Every single legislation.
Duplication.
You want
So
to
we have
regulate
something like here,
regulation.
you come up with a new entity and you
Yeah.
call it, this is an authority that will deal with people
But
because...
it ends up confusing
And by the way,
even more.
once you get the licenses, and I'm a living example, there's what we call the inspections. You have the same regulators coming to your premises
Yeah.
at different times, different days of the
Each
month.
of these 15 licenses has a regulator behind them.
Yep.
Yes, the cabs people will come on Monday, the 10th. The Kajiado County people will come on Wednesday, the 17th.
When they're ready.
The NEMA people will come on 21st on a Friday morning and arrest your people.
Arrest.
That is the intention, because you have
Public
not
health
complied.
people will come.
We have got a guy called OSHA. We have got public health. And then you are like, wait a minute. 16 of you are coming on 16 different days.
When do we do this work?
And the intention normally is not to aid or
Yeah.
make it easy for you. It is to find mistakes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the law will seek to do is to have them have a multi-agency approach, because you're all government anyway.
Yeah.
So come on Monday the 10th, and give us an appointment, and we are all there as directors to deal with you. Then come after 6 months. Let it be predictive, so that we can plan ourselves.
On this one, I would agree with the legislation. There should be legislation that they only come once or twice a month.
Or a year.
Or a year.
Or quarterly. You know,
Yes, because it can't be every week.
The same problem with our construction sites in Nairobi. Every other day, there's a new guy coming to check your compliance. And you're on the 11th floor. So you wonder, really, you've been on this for the last 3 years. What are you coming to check again as City Council or as NEMA?
They want to make sure that the 11th floor
This
is
is
really
the
the 11th floor. Yes. They dealt with the 10th. Now it's 11th. Yes.
And so this is what I want to do. And I hope it works out such that investors can easily do business. And I'm borrowing it heavily from Rwanda, where I was privileged to work as a young person. And I saw them setting up the one-stop shop in Kigali in the year 2001. And it has worked wonders. And that is why an investor sitting in Washington will look at the computer and look at ease of doing business in Africa. And top 5 countries. If we are not there, he'll go to the first 5. And depending on the reception he receives, depending on the tax regime, the incentives, he will invest his money there. Do you know we have Kenyans investing in Uganda today?
And they're finding it easier
It is easier to invest in
Uganda than in Kenya. And again, I say, what you're saying today has been said, even in those roundtables with Uhuru and the private sector. Those are the issues. The person who's putting up Taifa Gas now at the coast was in one of those Uhuru meetings where he was saying, he is expressing his frustration. I've been wanting to come and invest in Kenya. I have no idea where I need to go to now, Mr. President. Now, it was launched. Has it come online? I hear he's still facing frustration. Those kind of things, everybody in government, everybody who ought to know, knows. The question is, why don't they do it?
I don't understand.
Lack of goodwill.
Why? Because they're making money out of it.
Rent seeking.
Okay. But then if you look at it from a national outlook, there's
Some
nothing.
of them want to be shareholders in your investments.
It's
and they
sabotage, if
and
you
they tell you
ask me.
openly that what percentage will I
For me
get
to
in
approve this, I
in
need to
this,
be-
and
So then if you don't give me my percentage, I'm going to essentially
and that
stall
is why
this
our
product by
license
not
is stuck.
acting.
Why is my license stuck in Mombasa County since 2020? When I've complied with everything. I even got alternative land just to comply with their first query. And you speak to the governor until he leaves office. The new governor comes in and it's always promises. Are we serious? We are not.
You know, there's a country on this continent called South Africa during the days of apartheid. The laws that were enacted to keep the black African in his place were so many that it was almost difficult for even the implementers of the law to focus on which law. Because it's like with everything you did, you are likely to break the law. Let's come back to Kenya. Even before the emergency, you know all these estates that we look at in Eastlands, the reason why they are so tiny and the way they were built for Africans so that Africans would live there on their own. You're not supposed to come in with your family. That was the understanding. Now, you're not supposed to settle. You're supposed to live there and leave. What was the mentality? The colonialists understood that it's actually in their interest to ensure that this African is kept secluded from everything else. And the only time he gets to mingle with the rest of what is the part of the country that the white person ruled was when they were coming to work, and after that they went back. There are towns in South Africa where there was a railway line. The purpose of that railway line was to actually ship workers into the place where they work and out again. Why am I mentioning South Africa and the laws? You see, when you have laws that seem to be there to benefit the people, like the ones we have and with the new constitution, and every so often what you hear are complaints, and when the complaints arise, the politicians, you being one of them, tell us that they're rectifying this by creating yet another law, okay? And you don't hear of the repealing of that other law. No, another law to help curtail. You then have to ask yourself, do the people who were elected and those who are in positions of authority, do they have any intentions of actually making this country a better place? Because everything that we see, and it isn't just this government, even the previous government, there were complaints about every government that we have in this country. What we compare is which government was worse than the other, not which government was better. The only time the better conversation got to be a little reasonable and seemed to make sense was during the Kibaki era. And yet, even in the Kibaki era, with hindsight, people were saying better Moi. Now, Mheshimiwa,
Yes.
have we become a nation of complainers and whiners? Or do we actually have a problem that needs solving and it isn't in the creation of new laws? What do you think we need to do? You as an elder and you as somebody who has lived and has held positions of authority, what do you think we need to do?
You see, the common person, including my voters in Nyaribari Masaba, ordinarily are people who wake up in the morning and struggle to make ends meet with good intention. But then when they are told that this will be done to you or for you, and they wait a year down the line, they're bound to ask questions. And asking questions necessarily doesn't mean complain or even dissatisfaction. You simply want answers and a way forward. Now, what should we do? I think as a leadership, we need to focus on serving our people. That has been the biggest problem, that we start by looking at ourselves rather than the people. But more than that, we need to do or put our energies in priority areas. If it's agriculture, let us do agriculture. There's a theory called the hedgehog theory. Jim Collins in strategy. Do what you're good at. Do what you have passion for. And do what gives you returns. As a country, we seem not to have a clear priority. If it's agriculture, if it is manufacturing, if it is service sector, we're all over. We do too many things. We launch projects in every sector, every day. Number two, we need to have a deliberate effort to diversify. We can't do things the same way our fathers and the forefathers before them did and expect different results. And the diversification here includes the way we approach our traditional farming methods. And that's what I was saying. We need to look at value addition. We need to take advantage of these new digital superhighway platforms and not be the traditional email and WhatsApp things. No, go a level higher. Number three, we need to look for alternative funding options. And this is where PPP comes in.
Right.
We cannot rely on taxes to fund our debt, fund our development, and fund our current expenditure.
Right.
If harnessed properly, PPP is such a potential area of funding. I remember even reading the papers this morning about the noise in leasing of the port facilities.
Yeah.
Every country that has developed has leased facilities. We don't call it selling the port.
It's concession.
It's concession or landlord port model. If you go to Miami, the cruise terminals are run by private people. They've built, they operate, they just pay revenue. If you go to Singapore, 20 out of, I think, 30 berths are run by private sector. Our own neighbors, Tanzania, are run by private sector. What will it do when you do that? Then the money that we have as a country is used on education and health.
And even that, it's not.
But then when you have little money, we spread it all over, you can't get results. So if the government did those three things, in fact, those are low-hanging fruits if you ask me.
And by the way, Mheshimiwa, I'm listening. Again, value addition. County aggregation industrial parks. The whole thinking and the push for them is value addition.
Correct.
Special economic zones and expanding them. Again, value addition. So that one, we are saying we're heading in that direction.
Correct.
Okay. PPPs. An entire directorate at the Treasury for PPPs. And they're told, in fact, we want you to think about in the agricultural sector, PPPs, in water, PPPs, in this and the other, PPPs. So the conversations are happening in
let me
those
ask you,
directions in government quarters. The question is, what is holding them back? Is it that we are not moving at the pace that we should be moving at? Or is it that there are so many things that need to be aligned that are not aligned? And what are they?
In as much as we have the policy right, we have the directorates right, I think we are not moving at the right pace. How do you explain then that with all this PPP stock, and since we have had the law for the last 10 years or so, only one project has been closed? How do you explain that many projects don't see the light of day? And yet we know, if you walk across in other countries, they're working very well. What is it that is not working? Is it the competence of the people
No,
there?
it is we who are not working.
Is it that we're not attractive as an investment destination? The answer is no.
So what is it?
What is it?
The Kenyan idea of business. It's like we've institutionalized extortion as a way of doing business, so that instead of encouraging business to actually be business, we encourage business so that we can extort. We look at the billions of shillings that are allocated to our various ministries, and the highest officers in the land that either audit or tell us how this money is used are telling us in one voice that the money is spent, but you can't see it going into the projects for which it was intended. So it went somewhere because it isn't where it was intended. And it didn't go by itself. People took it there. So I think the story is out there and we've been told. It's clear.
So who do we need to get these things moving?
The idea of election and getting leaders in those positions so that this thing can be sorted out.
No.
Tried that before.
We are getting people into positions so they can go and do those things and bring us the money.
That is precisely. They don't actually bring us money. That's a myth.
Extortionists, so that now we can say, mtu wa Nyaribari, unajua ni neighbor yangu.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a complex situation. When you have an entire system of leadership that is best represented by people whose existence is based on extortion and how it is you can misappropriate government resources, how on earth do you expect to develop?
I'm really at pains to understand some of these things, Mheshimiwa, because obviously you rub shoulders every day. And why would you enter into a position of self-sabotage? Why would you do that? Because it is very clear how a country must develop. It is also clear what roles are in terms of governance, in terms of leadership. So when you choose, without seeing the bigger picture, to line or grease your own pockets, it's self-sabotage in the long term, because the country continues to suffer. I have always been of the opinion that you don't need somebody to tell you with words how they really feel about you as a citizenry. You can see from their actions. But then why would we continuously put a country in the position of jeopardy, of sabotage, over and over and over again, and then still miraculously reserve the right to complain about the situation later? Why? What conversations do you have with these guys?
What we need to do, and first, we need to work on the drivers that can give us growth. We know that in Kenya, for example, the service and agriculture industry are giving us the highest growth in GDP. So we need to deliberately leverage on our superior human capital and ensure that we transform these sectors with a single aim of leapfrogging these particular sectors using technology and innovation. We need to get easy access of credit to our people so that this can be a catalyst for productivity. It is very difficult today to get money from the bank. We need to go the Kibaki way. And how do we do that? Discourage government borrowing from the local institutions. And then we need to emphasize on skills. Eric, even if I'm a member of parliament here, I'm also a painter. What skills do you have? What am I saying? Encourage skill sets for everyone, such that our people have an option for a daily livelihood. And we need to be deliberate about job creation, whether locally or for export. Now, once we do this, then we start having a positive growth. Now, when you have a positive growth, you will not hear a lot of this noise because people will be busy.
People will be busy.
Working.
and earning and affording to live.
But also, the noise is good because it means that the citizens are aware. And noise is not bad at all because they're asking for their rights.
Yeah.
And we should encourage them to speak out when they feel that they have been muzzled.
Mheshimiwa, thank you very much for joining us. The Honorable Dr. Architect Daniel Manduku, Member of Parliament for Nyaribari Masaba Constituency, has been our guest this morning. Let's see how that bill fares in Parliament. We hope it gets support.
I hope so too.
Yeah, bipartisan support.
I will persuade my colleagues to see sense and see my way of looking at it.
Sawa. Keep it here for more conversations in the next hour. It's a Justice Thursday conversation. It's now 9 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.